Good afternoon, everybody. I am Katie Phillips, and I am the founder of the School of Self-Love, and I'm an intuitive and transformational coach. It's a pleasure to be with you for another interview now as part of the My Menopause interview. We've got some interesting feedback coming from you, Jeanne. Not sure why, but I muted you just for a second and I'll get back to you. Yeah, My Menopause interview series, and it's been the most amazing experience already. I'm absolutely coming to this interview series as the student, as a woman who's recently discovered she's in perimenopause, and already in 2.5 days I've learned so much, and I've got 2.5 days left to go, and I think I'm going to have to actually take a week out next week to actually sit and rewatch all of the interviews and take notes. But I've learned so much already. I hope those of you who've been following the series have learned a lot as well. And I have a feeling we've got a hell of a lot more to learn right now with Jeanne, Andrus. Let me unmute you. There we go. Hey, good to have you.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me. It's early morning here in Louisiana where I am, but happy afternoon to all of you who are on the other side of the pond.
Yeah. It's really great to have you, Jeanne. And I'm going to just read out your bio to get started, to introduce you to everybody. Jeanne Andrus is the menopause guru and author of 5 international bestsellers, 5, about the topic of menopause, including I Just Want to Be Me Again, which I think is going to be very much influencing our conversation today. Jeanne is a certified health coach, and she helps women who are struggling with the changes of perimenopause and menopause to tame their symptoms so that they can step back into the lives they love. Her message is profoundly different to that of many menopause coaches, because she believes that menopause is a gift to women, opening a portal for transformation that allows us to achieve both our wildest dreams and our deepest potentials. And I love that. And actually, Jeanne, you're in really good company, because every single expert that I've spoken to so far, and I know who I'm speaking to coming up, they're on the same page. They also believe that menopause is a gift and it's an opportunity for real transformation. So you are in awesome company. You're not alone there. And I have a feeling more and more people are coming around to this idea. And you're one of the few who are really leading. Can you hear that feedback? Is it okay?
Yeah, I'm not hearing the feedback, but you're dropping out. So something's going on.
Yeah, don't worry about it. We can work with it. I think when you can't hear me very well, it's when the feedback comes up on the microphone. We're going to work with it. Why don't we kick off? I think every woman loves a personal story, so please, Maisie, if you don't mind, share your menopause story.
So my story is so familiar, I think, to so many women, because I started in perimenopause when I was, actually the first indications were when I was 42, and no one thought to tell me I was going through this. My mother was much older, so she had gone through menopause very early, and she was of that generation that doesn't talk about it anyway. So I had no clue what was happening to me. And my first symptom, besides a vicious allergy attack, was depression. So I was losing motivation. I was losing connection. And I was going through depression. My ex was not terrible, who was then my husband, wasn't terribly supportive of it, and my doctors weren't telling me anything. So I didn't know why I felt like I did. My periods were more regular than ever. And sooner, as a part of it, I wound up losing my husband, my house, my dog. A lot of things I loved just sort of disappeared out of my life because I didn't know how to keep them. So when that happened to me, I kind of decided that it was either I let this kill me, I was eating myself to death, or I could make it the best thing that ever happened to me. And I did. I wound up getting involved in a diet and exercise program, an online program that really helped. I had the support, the daily support, the weekly support of people who were able to help me get my life back on track. But it still wasn't till about 3 or 4 years later that I actually figured out that it was perimenopause. So when all that started happening to me, I realized that I needed to be the one that helped women figure this out, that it really is something that we should have been taken into a room, dragged into a room and told about when we were, say, 38, that this was coming and this is some of the things you could expect.
Oh my God, that's such a good idea. Absolutely. I think it should be, we should have this education in our 30s at least. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, that's so I became a personal trainer, grew into being a health coach and a life coach, and now I call myself a menopause mastery coach. And I really do look at a holistic picture. I often start with women who are experiencing symptoms that are just dragging them one way or the other. And we work together to tame those symptoms. And then we go on to look at the bigger picture, what their lives can be now that they are through with the reproductive parts of their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And, okay. What I would love to hear from you is, how are we, women, how have we been conditioned to think and to respond to menopause?
So I tell this story about that. When I was about 3, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was the Disney movie, and I was about 3 when it came around for like the 3rd time. They used to release it. Believe it or not, you couldn't get movies on demand. There was no VCR, there was no DVD. But I remember going to the theater, the movie theater, and it was this big movie theater with red velvet seats, and I sat in the seat, my legs stuck out on the end, and I was sitting between my mother and my brother, and the lights went down and the pictures started moving, and that was the first time I'd seen color pictures, by the way. I'm a black and white era baby, and these beautiful colored pictures came on, and Snow White was singing. And then the Queen came on, and she goes, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of us all?" And the mirror answers, "You, my Queen, have a beauty quite rare, but little Snow White is 1,000 times more fair." The Queen bursts into a rage and starts plotting, and a few scenes later, she turns into a hag.
Yeah.
And this is our first view of menopause. This is our very first view of a woman who has gone to what society says is the end of her beauty and her youth, and she turns into, almost instantly, and in Snow White's case, the Queen's case, instantly, a hag. And this is the way that if Snow White wasn't your first, the same happens in Cinderella, in Sleeping Beauty, in The Little Mermaid, in 101 Dalmatians. So these iconic movies are really showing us what society expects us to be.
Yeah, it's really kind of made growing old something to fear, because you become a shriveled up hag without any real purpose and vibrancy, and you become a bit mean and nasty and cynical.
Yeah. So when I look at that, it's sort of like, what is it that I want to be, and why is it that viewpoint has come about? And I believe it's because as women, the estrogen and progesterone has pushed us towards a place where we are wanting to build community, build nests, build families so that we can nurture and protect our children. That's our biological purpose, and that's what our biology is designed to do. But then we get given this wonderful gift of that going away, and we get to choose how child-centric, how other-centric we want to be. And it really is a gift. So I look at it as the time when you can look back on your life, and I do this with my clients. I help them look back at what their lives have been and what they might have wanted to do or dreamed about doing as a child, and putting that all together with the things that have caught their interest, caught their eye throughout their lives. And maybe they haven't had time because maybe they were building a career, or they were building a family, they were raising children, or they were doing it all, as so many of us do. And they didn't have time for those extra interests. So now they have this time. They have this space where they can choose to make themselves a new focus in their lives. And I'm not saying that means drop everything you ever did. I think that my loss of my marriage was not necessary. It turned out to be a really good thing, but for my life. But it's not necessary to give up everything else you were doing. But it is possible now to take and refocus that now that your children are a little older. I know some of you have little children at home, but guess what? You don't need to helicopter parent anymore either. So it's a really awesome time of life to take and rethink who you are.
Yes. Yeah. So menopause isn't about it being the end of your life. And this is the theme. This is every interview. This is what's going to highlight it. It's not the end. It's the beginning of the next chapter.
Most women finish menopause at 51. That's the average age today, both in the US and in Europe. And the average lifespan of those same women is 81. So if you think about it, you are less than 2/3 of the way through your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, goodness, my grandparents lived into their 90s. My granddad lived to 100. So, I feel I've got a lot of time left. I'm in perimenopause and I'm 43, and I feel like I've got more than half of my life.
You probably do.
Yeah.
You probably do. And it's possible now with a lot of the things that we're learning about health and nutrition and exercise and medicine that keeps us, that takes care of the not the chronic stuff as much as the acute stuff. I really believe that most of our chronic problems are better dealt with nutrition, exercise, stress management, if you can. There's some that don't, but we can live healthfully into our 80s and 90s. So we're not going to be stuck in nursing homes and just warehoused for that part of our lives. We have the opportunity to be vibrant, contributing members of our society well into our 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so you're quite the expert around hormonal shift. That's what menopause is, right? We've got massive hormonal shifts going on.
Right.
We had a chat the other day, something that I thought you spoke to really powerfully, which I would love for you to do here for the audience, is to talk about menopause and hormonal shifts. What actually are hormones doing to us? Like, how does that change our different stages of lives? How does it change kind of who we are? The change in hormones seems to affect who we are.
Right. So there are two main hormones that menopause effects, and that is progesterone and estrogen, and especially estrogen. Estrogen has been used by our bodies to create the, quote, sex differences. Now, even babies have a little bit different hormonal balance, but through our pre-puberty years, our balances are fairly similar to boys, and then estrogen comes along, and we have estrogen receptors in every cell of our bodies. So every part of our bodies, our brains, our skin, our bones, our organs, all take estrogen in and say, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do with you. And so especially our brains and our nervous system seem to react well to estrogen. But what it does to us is says, let's get ready to raise a baby. And so for humans, because we have this really long period where babies into early childhood can't take care of themselves. Recently, I raised a litter of kittens, and kittens are on their own in 8 weeks. But for babies, it's years. And so a mom can't survive by herself easily without a community around her. So she needs that attraction to men or a man, depending on the society, so that they will go and hunt for her. And she needs her sisters, her fellow women, to help her as she has to deal with all of the other things that have to go on in order to make the society. So estrogen really triggers us to be that. And I talk about these women who live in these hunter-gatherer societies. And so these young women become a tribe of their own. They work together. They take care of the children. And many of them die in childbirth. Many of them die in accidents. But a few of them live on, and they hit this menopausal stage. And we've always wondered why it is that it happens, because it doesn't happen for every animal. It doesn't happen for every mammal. But what seems to happen is that women become these wise women, and they are sort of tribal elders who get to know about their world in a whole different way. They understand more because now they're thinking more like men, because our thought patterns are influenced by estrogen. And so they have this sort of bridge state between the men of the tribe and the women of the tribe, and they don't have a reproductive role in the group, nor often they're not raising children still. And so they have the opportunity to become a different person in that society. And that's what we have as women in modern America or modern Europe.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. I can totally see how our hormones are needed for different stages of our life.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you think then why do we want to replace our estrogen? So why hormonal replacement therapy? Like, what do you think about HRT?
I think HRT is something that we use when the symptoms get too bad. Right. So I try not to judge a woman for choosing to go on to HRT or choosing to use an antidepressant because things have gotten out of hand. But I also know from my own work that taking using food correctly, using exercise correctly, using stress management, using the way we think about this differently allows us to step into this place where our hormones aren't the primary influence on us. So HRT kind of short circuits this thing that nature has given us, or the universe has given us, or God has given us, however you believe it happens, we've been given this gift. And if you go on taking estrogen and progesterone, all you're doing is stepping back into that old person, that person that was, and you're not accepting the gift of moving forward.
Yeah, I really hear you. And I'm hearing stories from plenty of women that HRT saved their life. They felt like, there's a, not for everybody, but for some, it's like it was just diet was going to do it.
Yeah. And a lot of times that's because I have some theories. A lot of my stuff is I have these insights into the way things work, but they may not be true. But I think a lot of times that we have come into menopause not prepared for it, prepared mentally, prepared emotionally, and prepared physically for the changes that we're going through. The modern diet doesn't necessarily lend itself to the health situation that we should be in. The modern world doesn't lend itself to aging as a positive experience. So we come into it being a little afraid, being a little unhealthy. I know I was terribly out of shape, and I was eating all the wrong stuff, and I was overstressed. So it wasn't until I took charge of my health that I really started feeling well again. So HRT can be a lifesaver, absolutely. But you need to think about whether or not that's the long-term solution. And I will say this for HRT, many, many doctors will not prescribe HRT beyond 5 years. Many of us can't take it. But when you do take it for 5 years, your body gets incredibly lazy, and when you go off it, it doesn't pick up and make the residual hormones that most of us are making naturally. So you go into an almost instant menopause again, and all the symptoms can come back.
Right. We've got, I'm quite excited actually. I think it's really important to have included it in this series. We've got a HRT specialist.
I'm glad you do.
Speaking on Friday actually. So, or was it Thursday? I can't remember. In the next 2 days. And I think it's important because I think it needs to be about choice. And
yes.
What's right for the individual. Really hear you. And what really came to me imagine if we were really were educated in our 30s to understand what was coming, then maybe we would be physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually in a stronger place to manage what was coming, and not maybe, and I'm just putting this out here, this is not fact, of course, I'm the student, but then maybe we wouldn't have to jump to HRT because we would already be prepared on a more holistic level.
I really believe that. I think it's hard to reach out to women in their 30s and say, because of this whole conditioning thing, we're like terrified, and I tell people, I'll go out into the community and I'll be talking with people and I'll say, you really need to read my book. And they say, oh no, I'm not there yet. And they don't want to think that it's not a downside. It is a very positive step forward. And when I do talk to them, and then they go and they grab a copy of my Just Want to Be Me Again book, or they go out and do some research on their own, they start seeing how they can step into this in a much, much more positive way and from a much more positive place. And what I find is that if you're not fighting it, that you have the room to say, what choice is the right choice for me? Is it the right choice to take some herbs? Is it the right choice to take HRT? Or do I just want to be the person who can do this with exercise and diet? And it doesn't always work out the way you think it's going to work out. One of the things I've learned is you cannot predict the path that any woman will take, because there's so many variables and we have no idea what most of them are.
I really, such a strong message coming through here. I feel like, if we were to prepare in our 30s, sort of 40s, 50s, we be able to sail through menopause. And I think menopause is also calling us to get super healthy and conditioned so that when we go into the next half of our life, we're less likely to then take on things like heart disease and osteoporosis and cancer and all the nasties that tend to happen a little later in life. So I feel like the dietary shifts, the healing and the transformation on mental and emotional levels, spiritual shifts, all of that can happen through menopause. If we can really take that on positively, it can then keep us healthy, avoiding all those other big nasties. That's inspiration at each stage, isn't it, to keep us healthy in the next stage?
Exactly. And I became an athlete in my early 50s, late 40s, early 50s. I started doing adventure sports and I started running, and by transforming my health and by embracing who I was, I think I have taken on a whole new part of my life that's just so much fun and so healthy and so exciting that I love sharing that stuff with people. I often do private days for clients, and I take them rock climbing or rock wall climbing or diving or skiing or these strange obstacle courses or whatever, and we just have a blast doing it because they're realizing that they don't have to be our image of our grandmothers, that they can be whoever and whatever they want to do. I see a lot of women moving into entrepreneurship, into their own businesses, into going back and saying, I want to be an artist, or I want to be a writer, or I want to be a poet, or I've always wanted to do theater, or I've always wanted to travel the world, or you don't have to do the crazy stuff I do. I really, I take people doing crazy stuff because it pushes them beyond their limits. But once they get beyond their limits, they start realizing that what they really want is this life that maybe they dreamed of as a child. Maybe they wanted to be, they go back to school, they get a degree in something that they've not thought about for 30 or 40 years, and they're finding themselves being what the Dalai Lama called the savior of the modern world, because we have this space in ourselves that says, now what? Now who? Now who do you want to be? Now is your time to move forward into your life.
And that's leads in really nicely to talking to you about your book, where I Just Want to Be Me Again. And I know that you're experiencing this, and having spoken to a few experts now, they are having this. Where women are coming saying, I just want to feel like me again. I'm sick of feeling like some other person has come and taken my body hostage or my mind hostage, and I want to be me again. So can we be me again? Or because I feel like you're suggesting something a little different.
So that's the secret of the book. The me that you become is more than the me that you were. We kind of get into this comfortable place. We know our place in the world. We know who our friends are. We know who our kids are. We know who our husband is. We know who our dog is. We know who our community is. But then we hit this shift. And it really can, in my case, it threw me out of my house. It threw me out of the region I lived in. I moved from New England, the northern states in America, to southeast Louisiana. I completely changed. I completely changed my career, my life, and I kept a cat, one of my cats. And what we find is that we now get to be the amalgam, the compilation, the putting together of everything we ever wanted to be and do in our lives. We get to choose who we want to be. And that's a choice that our biology has been making for us over the last 30 years. And so it's kind of cool that we get this choice now of who we want to be. And so me, again, is a little bit of a lie. It's a little bit of, I can't be the same person I was in my 20s. But the truth is, you can't be the same person you were yesterday.
No. I don't think I want to be the same person I was in my 20s, actually. I mean, I love her. I think back to her. She was so adventurous and wonderful. I don't think her again. She hasn't got my...
Yeah, the person you were in your 20s, the person you were in your 30s, now what you're going to find is in your 50s, you're not going to be the person you were in your 40s, and you're not going to be the person in the 60s that you were in your 50s. You get to choose who that is. And you get to, it's odd because one of the things I do with my people is I do values and I do strengths and I even do Myers-Briggs. And what every woman finds is that those have shifted a little. What they were good at when they were 35 is not what they're good at when they're 50. They're also often more introverted, or they deal with their social groups differently. Their values may have shifted a little. So women who were on point for a career, a C-level job, may find themselves saying, I want to go on a mission trip to South Africa. I want to build a community for older women to live together, or I want to learn how to weave cloth on a loom, on a hand loom that was designed by Incas 1,000 years ago. And we find that we really are evolving as people. And so we go on spiritual journeys. We go on vision quests. We go on physical activities that we didn't think we'd love. And it's just so rich. It's so open.
Yeah, I just had this image then, speaking of myself when I was in my 20s, and well, very early, so actually I was more like late teens, 18, 19, 20, and I went off backpacking around Europe. I'm an Australian, and all Aussies go off for their year or so, and they go backpacking and live on next to nothing. I think to back then, and I used to live on baguette and jam every day and cup of soups to get me through because I didn't have any money. But I had a very adventurous spirit and I wanted to see the world. And it's interesting, I can see going forward, it's just, I've still got the adventurous spirit. I've got some money now. I can travel differently.
I think that's true. I think that you do get to the point where that backpacking pad seems awfully hard.
Yeah. The kids away to Indonesia in August, and we're all taking backpacks. We're like, no suitcases, we're backpacking it. Should be fun.
Yeah, I find myself, it's interesting, a couple of weeks ago I went to Mexico for the first time, and my husband and I went out on a adventure course, and we were, let's say, significantly older than the next oldest participant. And yet we had a blast. And so you do find yourself doing things in a little different way. The next day we spent the day on the beach, not quite so adventurous. But you have that opportunity to choose now. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I say about menopause is it gives you a choice that you may not even have realized you didn't have, that was pushing you in this direction to kind of, there is a reason for our societal roles. They allow us to raise children, and without children, we don't have the next generation, and things stop.
Now the next topic before Q&A. By the way, I've forgotten to mention to those of you who are on the Zoom call, if you have any questions, you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's a little Q&A box. You can ask questions. I've got a couple coming up already. Feel free to ask questions, and Jeanne I will read them out to her in a moment. If you're on Facebook, you're very welcome to leave your questions in the feed if you have any, but we won't answer them live on the call. Jeanne or I can address those after the call today or tomorrow or at some point soon. But let me just ask you this, Jeanne. I want to speak about men, and I want to speak about how we can communicate with men. How can we renegotiate our relationships, perhaps even redefine our relationships with our partners while we're going through such a big transition?
So a lot of my clients, a lot of the people I talk with frequently have this same issue. Our men are amazing, and a lot of them are allies, and they have been wonderful to us over the years. My ex and I had a fabulous relationship for 27 years, and then it shifted as I shifted, and I didn't know what was happening. So I recommend talking to your men. I really do. They have to understand that this is going on. And this is one of the reasons that I want to drag you into a room when you're 38 and tell you all about this so you can tell them. And I know that doesn't happen. So I actually wrote a book that was designed for women to read and give to their men. It's sort of I don't want to use the term dumbed down, but it's like a condensed version of I Just Want to Be Me Again. It's called Where Is My Wife and What Have You Done With Her? Because they're very confused by these changes that happen to us. So I wrote this book for you to read and to give to your guy or to talk about with your guy. And it gives you some ideas of how to talk about the changes you're going through, why and how your libido may have changed, because honestly, they are interested in why you're not interested in them in the bedroom. And some of the things that they can do to help you through. And some of the things they shouldn't do in order to stay alive. Because we get in really bad moods. I did last night. Something happened last night, triggered me, and I was a raving maniac for about 20 minutes. And it still happens. And I can't tell you it won't ever happen to you again, because obviously it just did. But it helps them understand. So my biggest tip is to talk to them. But my second biggest tip is to get my book, Where's My Wife and What Have You Done With Her? It's available on Amazon.com. It's not that expensive, and it will help you understand what they might be thinking. I actually wrote it with my husband, and he contributes some of the funniest lines in the book. It's a lot more humorous than some of the other books that I've written, because he's like a wise smart ass. And he asks the questions that men ask. And because of our relationship starting when I was going through this, he got to see a lot of it. And he understands what those things are. So talk to your guys. Don't assume that they know what's going on. Don't assume that they have any clue, even what your insides look like. You can explain that.
Yeah. It's a really good point. It's really, I love the title of your book. I love that. Where's my wife? What have you done with her? It's brilliant. Are you happy to answer a question that we've got come through, Jeanne?
Sure.
So, Jeanne says, you mentioned allergies. My hay fever has become almost unbearable unless I take antihistamines daily. Why do you think allergies worsen at this time?
So allergies are actually an autoimmune disorder, and I have them. I never had them until I was in my 40s, and the first time I had them was I was driving down the highway, and it was pine season up here, and pines just like rain pollen. And I started sneezing, and I couldn't stop, and I couldn't see, and I was driving, and I'm like hitting the steering wheel with my head with every sneeze because they were violent. I eased off the highway and bought antihistamines. So what's happened is the hormones in our body are triggering an almost autoimmune-like disorder. And they're saying they're not reacting the same way. So do I really know the mechanism? No, but I do know that hormonal shifts, and this is true of pregnancy, this is true of puberty, are often triggers for the way our body reacts to things in our environment. And honestly, raw honey from your area and antihistamines. I use raw honey from the area to kind of, what it does is it kind of, it's almost like allergy shots where you're desensitizing. So if you can find that somebody who has raw honey in your area, beekeeper, I definitely recommend taking a little bit of that, not overly much, but a teaspoon a day will actually help you with your seasonal allergies.
Wow, that's a really nice tip. I had no idea about allergies coming into play through menopause.
Yeah.
Really great, Jeanne. Thank you for picking that up. And Jeanne, thank you for answering it. I think that's all of our Q&A for now. I can't see anything else. Jeanne, before we wrap up, we're sort of 45 minutes in, I would love for you to, I'm sure something we haven't covered or a big something Yeah, sorry, let me mute myself. I think it's when I'm talking, your microphone doesn't like it. A message that you would love to leave with the audience before we wrap up today.
Okay, so I think that women need three things to get through menopause successfully, or more than successfully, to fly through menopause. And the first is knowledge. So that's why I've written my books. There are other books out there. And I have offered you a free copy of my book, I Just Want to Be Me Again. And I think knowledge is just so important. The second thing is a commitment to yourself. So take the time to say to yourself, I am important. I am the person who is going to live the rest of my life, and I want to do it incredibly. And the third thing is support. I don't know, some of us have a support system in place. Some of us have sisters and cousins and friends that are the same age and willing to talk about it. And some of us don't. And coaches make really good support partners. Friends make really good support partners. Talk about this. It's not taboo. It is something that we are all going to go through. So I offer to talk with any woman who wants to just talk about what's going on with her and what the right path is for her. But make sure that you get the support. Don't try and go it alone. And unfortunately, our doctors in the States, they don't have the time for this. So find somebody who really does have the time to talk to you about it and talk about it.
That's a really good point, because it's the same here in the UK. The doctors they don't have the time to talk about it. You know, an appointment lasts, I think it's like 8 minutes.
I think we're at 12, but it's not long enough. And some doctors, unfortunately, some doctors have been trained. If your doctor was trained before 2005, they may not even understand what's really going on, because the research has changed so much about what we know and what we believe about menopause that your GP, your general practitioner, may have had an hour or one class, a 3-hour lecture on menopause. Your OBGYN concentrated on the OB side, I hate to say it. And there are very few menopause experts as doctors, and they just don't have the time.
Yeah. I think you're quite right. Awareness, education, support is key. And I know for me already, it's just those 3 pieces are shifting things. Jeanne, thank you so much for your time today. It's been so valuable. I really enjoyed talking to you.
I have enjoyed talking with you as well, Katie, and with all of this audience. I'm out here. I am the Menopause Guru, and you can reach me on my site, on Facebook, and I'd love to talk with you more about your journey and how unique your journey is.
Absolutely. And I will make sure that I put the link to the PDF of your book, I Just Want to Be Me Again. I'll put it in the Facebook feed, and I will add it to, when I load this up onto YouTube, it'll be there for everyone.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jeanne. Gorgeous to meet you. Thank you for today.
It's been a blast.
Love. Bye, everybody.